Hi, it's Jocelyn Hardrick, founder of Diversity Access Pipeline, Inc., the nonprofit organization behind this podcast, Journey to Esquire, the podcast, and other great programs like Journey to Esquire, Scholarship Leadership Program, and Journey to Esquire, the blog. I'm so excited today to pass the mic to two guests. We're doing a special. We have a double feature. First, we're passing the mic to Marisol Ruiz, who is an associate at McIntyre Thanasides, and she's also an adjunct professor at WMU Cooley, teaching dependency. She does complex commercial litigation, where her practice consists of representation of community associations. I'm very familiar with that. Real estate, family law, business litigation, and bankruptcy. Areas of law that are probably going to get really hot in the next few years, given everything that's going on. Marisol is a Tampa native and a double Gator. And so she got her JD and her BA in Anthropology from the University of Florida. And we are also passing the mic to Ben Fletcher. He is an associate at Gunster, and he's part of the business litigation practices, where he focuses on business torts and breach of contract disputes at the federal, state, and local levels. And he also does some things with real estate, fraudulent transfers and bankruptcy, public record disclosures, and lots of different interesting areas of law. He went to University of Florida and got his JD and graduated from the University of Connecticut with a bachelor's in political science. Welcome, you two.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's get into why we're here today. We want to hear about your journey to Esquire. So let's first talk about why you decided to become a lawyer. Marisol?
So I decided to become a lawyer, I would say several reasons. One, I really wanted to genuinely help people. And I know that probably sounds cliche because a lot of people say, oh, I want to, help the world or change the world. But that is honestly why I became a lawyer. I thought that this career really, allows you to help others. And in addition, when I was younger, I would watch a lot of Law and Order SVU. So it was cool to see the television and the courtroom scene and, how the lawyers kind of function and speak to the jury. And then now that I'm in the profession, I realize it's a lot different than that. But, I still enjoy it. And that's really my primary goal, is honestly to help others. And though sometimes through my particular practice area, it might not be outwardly helping people, but I also volunteer. So it allows me to kind of have that balance.
It's funny, I recently saw a meme on Facebook that said Law and Order SVU is the new Matlock, because I grew up watching reruns of Matlock with my mom. And so now younger attorneys are saying, yeah, Law and Order SVU has been on over 20 years now. And so
I've watched every episode.
Yeah, see, and I was like that with like Matlock and Perry Mason. And so I'm like, wow, the generations have really, we've passed the mantle.
So I've never watched Matlock, but I have watched Law and Order SVU.
Yeah, you gotta search for Matlock. You might have to go on YouTube or go to one of the local channels that just needs to fill up their time for older people like myself and my mom. So Ben, what's your story?
So my purpose was similar to Marisol's. When I finished college, I decided to join a nonprofit called City Year. And I went into the Bronx and started teaching middle school students. Typically, it's a one-year program, but I liked it a lot, did it for 3 years. And I just learned a lot about a world that was very different from my own. And I learned a lot about the education system and how different it can be in different geographic regions. And I decided I didn't want to be a teacher. That was something I was considering, but I said, I want to continue to work in the education field, possibly work with kids. I loved working with young people, and also have a positive impact in the work that I do. And so did a little research, talked to people, and I decided to go to law school. I am from Connecticut, so I went to University of Connecticut for undergrad, but ended up down at the University of Florida because my entire family is originally from down here. My mom is from Jacksonville. My dad's from Miami. So we just sort of grew up coming down here all the time. Got into UF Law, had never been there, visited it one day, was walking around. There was nobody there when I visited it. It was closed, actually. There were no tours. There was nothing. But I met a couple random people, and I just introduced myself and asked them some questions. And I just had a really good feeling about it. So I decided to go there. And we went, the story continued from there. I learned a lot about the different aspects of law. And my entire purpose in law school was to eventually someday come back to either working with young people, working in education policy on a little bit of a bigger scale than working in one school only. What I do now, I'm in private practice. You mentioned it at the top, business litigation, various disputes with corporate clients. And I do enjoy what I do. But I think when you come out of law school, it's good to start somewhere to learn how to be an attorney, learn from really seasoned litigators in my case, and start to build mentors and see where your path can take you. So I'm not sure what the future holds, but my initial purpose for going to law school is still there, and I still have big plans for what I see myself doing in the future.
Oh, that's a great story. So now we get the ties from Connecticut into Florida. And yeah, I'm from New York too. I also taught in the Bronx. I was in Teacher America. So very similar backgrounds, wanting to help students, but didn't want to ultimately be elementary school teacher. And now I'm e-learning. So wow, the training pays off.
Can I ask you what school you were at?
Hmm?
Can I ask you what school you taught at?
Jonathan D. Hyatt Elementary School, IS 38. Yeah, I can't remember, but Jonathan D. Hyatt Elementary is the 138th Street in the Bronx.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So it's just very interesting. It's such a small world, right? And so I was similar. I kind of decided I want to be a teacher, even though now I'm a professor. It's kind of like being a teacher. But young folks, I'm going to keep to the professionals who are trained to deal with the younger folks, because that is it's a very special skill, as I'm sure you know, Ben, dealing with middle school students. Definitely. So now let's go a little back in time, and we'll have Ben start and tell us about your law school application process. You touched on it a little bit because you were in Connecticut, you had family here in Florida. Did you apply to more than one school, and how did you make that decision?
I did. I applied to maybe 4 or 5. I didn't apply to that many. I wasn't sure that I was going to go to law school when I ended up going. Like I said, I was in my nonprofit, did 1 year, and then you sort of re-sign after each year. So I did it again for a second year, did it again for a third year, and I was thinking maybe I'll keep doing this for a few more years, but let me start applying to law schools and see where I'm at and how competitive I am. So I applied to some in the Northeast and then a couple down here in Florida. And Florida, I think, was pretty quick, and that's when I flew down to visit to really make it real for myself. And that I had a really good vibe when I visited Gainesville. I felt like I could see myself being there for 3 years. And so I just chose UF, and that was it. It wasn't really like I was balancing 2 or 3 and I applied to 30 places. It wasn't like that. And so, yeah, it happened pretty quickly, and I was very happy with my decision.
And Marisol, you ended up in the same place, but what was your process like to get there?
So I actually graduated undergrad a year ahead of time. And at the moment, I 100% knew I wanted to go to law school. That's always been my goal. And so what I did was apply to several schools. And I was actually going to start at the University of Texas. I had signed, I had gotten an apartment, everything. And I was driving over there, and unfortunately got into a car accident. And so everything was okay, but I think it made me rethink things because I was so away from my friends and family and home. So I really took the time and discussed it with several individuals. And I thought, well, that would have been the year that I graduated early, so I still would have been an undergrad at UF. So instead, I decided to come back to Tampa and then just work a little bit and then just take the time to maybe breathe. And so then I applied again. I applied to FSU and Stetson, and I was in between Stetson and UF. I loved the Stetson campus. I thought it was beautiful. And I think their program is also a great program as well. So I think I discarded FSU because of my loyalties to UF. So I was in between those, and I went back to Gainesville, and when I was there, it just felt, I was already used to it. So I felt comfortable. And so I decided Stetson was also a little too close to home. I wanted to venture back out. And so I ended up, just going to UF and starting there. I'd already gotten accepted and it was familiar to me. So I was happy. I'm happy to be a double Gator, and it's a great experience. It's different than Tampa. I'm much so like a city person. So Gainesville to me sometimes did feel like the middle of nowhere, but now they've built a lot more things. So I have actually several young people that I mentor, and they recently got into UF. So I was up there and I just was fascinated with everything else that they had built compared to even when I was there. So I'm very happy with my decision. And if I had to do it all over again, I would have done the exact same thing.
Nice. So there's a lot of things students have to consider when they're deciding what school to go to. And, I came from New York and came to Tallahassee. That was a big culture shock, but I had family in the Tampa Bay area. I ultimately met my husband, the man who would become my husband. And so I was able to drive home every other weekend, even though it was a 4.5-hour drive, there was still someone close by. So I get that whole, you're in Texas and you're like, I have no one out here. And law school is so stressful. So if going somewhere familiar is something you're interested in, I suggest doing that, because there'll be other stressors that make it hard, that makes it challenging, and there'll be ample opportunities to meet people from all over the country, as we just demonstrated, because we all have ties one way or another. So now you two are in law school. Talk about, whether or not you enjoyed it. Some people do, some people don't. What do you think, Marisol?
Law school was okay. It was not undergrad, but I think in law school I just had other responsibilities. So I, at the time, was actually commuting from Gainesville to Tampa, and it may not seem like a lot, but 2 hours is, takes up a lot of your day. So, I would just get up in the morning, go to Gainesville, and then after class, I would go back to Tampa. So I don't know that I had the traditional law school experience. And so I liked it, but I just felt that it was, more so of something that I needed to get done. I really didn't kind of venture out and meet a lot of people. The people that I did meet, I do stay in contact with, but I think my experience was just a little different. So I didn't, also I don't drink, so I know those, kind of events where you meet people. I was more so focused on getting there, doing the work, and then coming back to Tampa. So that was my overall experience. Wasn't bad, it was okay, but that was basically the overall gist of it.
Okay, and then what was your experience like? And then I guess you can tell us how you two ended up meeting and becoming friends and confidants and encouraging one another.
Yeah, sure. I really did love law school. Anybody who asks me that, I always say I really had a much more positive experience in law school than I did in undergrad, which I enjoyed, but I had grown up a lot and I had worked for 3 years, and I really believed in my education in law school. And my law school was I felt it was a very supportive environment. I got involved in everything I could get involved with. Organizations, meeting people, talking to the professors. I think it was just because I was committed to doing well and, getting the most out of the education. When you're spending so much money for this education, it's easy to realize that you need to commit yourself to it, make it your number one priority, treat it like a job, which is what I did. So I really loved law school. Obviously, it's very stressful at times, but as long as you have that final goal in mind and that reason why you're there, it all makes sense. And Marisol was actually one of the teaching assistants in my first year legal writing class. So I think we initially met then, but then we were in trial practice maybe a year or two later together. So we got closer then, and then she graduated a year ahead of me, and then I graduated. And I just think we just connected well in terms of talking about what it means to be a first-year lawyer. You need to have someone who you can call and ask those stupid questions. Hopefully that person is in your office, or, maybe like a family member or friend. Marisol and I think we do that for each other, where I can call her and say, hey, I need to draft this motion. Can you take a look, or can you send me an example of something that you've done before? Super important to have someone like that in the practice of law as a first or second year. And so, and we've become good friends. So I think we'll keep taking care of each other.
Yeah, so when Marisol and I first spoke, she was reaching out to me as a professor trying to just get some tips. The same concept, the first time you do something, it's always nice to have someone just kind of, like you said, where do I go for X? It's like something simple like, how do I set up the class again? Especially now we're all online. It's a whole new world for even seasoned professors. And seasoned lawyers are navigating all this new technology. So brand new lawyers have the leg up on that if they are familiar with it, but definitely you cannot beat someone who's already done it when it comes to writing motions, understanding how a rule applies in a certain court, things like that. So it's awesome that you two have each other for that. And it's awesome that we get to do this podcast together, because it's a first for me. So now let's go into the job search. You two have, apparently landed in nice places, nice firms with great reputations, doing the great kind of work that you can do early on as an attorney to really build up your portfolio and your experience. But let's go back to when you first started looking for a job when you're in law school. So would you like to start that?
Sure. I guess I get to my first summer. I had an internship at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Tampa, where you guys are, because my aunt actually works at the U.S. Attorney's Office. And so I learned a lot about criminal law, prosecution, public interest work, really top caliber prosecutors. And I was in court a lot, just observing, learning a lot. And then my second summer, I'm sure a lot of the schools of your listeners are going to know what OCIs are, on-campus interviews, where the law firms come to your school and interview the students. And so I had a couple of OCIs, and one of them was with Gunster, which is a law firm in Florida. They have 13 offices around the state, pretty big. Had a good interview, connected, and ended up coming down to visit the office. Things just went well, and I ended up having a summer internship during my second summer in West Palm Beach, where I am now. The summer was great. You're working hard, but the priority is really the impression that you make to the partners. Do you seem like you're a trustworthy person? Can they see you coming in every day and being hardworking and being, someone who's committed and trustworthy, handling fairly big tasks. It was a good summer. I got an offer at the end of the summer, and then I came back right after the bar exam. And so I'm really grateful for my experience, because a lot of my friends didn't have it go quite that easily. So a lot of people are weighing different things and one of the challenges for me was this location, honestly, because I don't have any ties to West Palm Beach, and I didn't ultimately want to end up in West Palm Beach. But as it happens, I really enjoy it here. And, I think if I were to give some advice to someone starting out, especially these days with all the uncertainty, if you get an opportunity, it's not necessarily in your hometown, or it's not necessarily the exact opportunity that you want, have an open mind and maybe give it a shot, because I didn't want to be here necessarily in this location. I have family in Jacksonville, and I have family in other places, but I did it, and I fell in love with the location, and I fell in love with the people in the office that I work with. So, I would say stay open-minded, and hopefully things will work out.
Yeah, and you're our second Gunster interview. We interviewed John Schifino, who is one of the newer partners. Yeah, he's my mentor. He's a big fan of the program. And so, and his brother, Bill Schifino, very well known in Tampa, and joined Gunster, what was it, last year, I guess?
Yeah, they, they,
recent.
they, they
Yeah.
both came in together maybe a year ago, maybe a little more. Yeah.
Yeah, a little over a year. And
Mm.
so we're excited to have another Gunster person and give you all a shout out. One of our goals for the program is getting law students into big law firms and understanding what you've described, the mentorship, the experience, the things you're going to learn from watching people who do this stuff really well so that you can go on and do whatever else you want to do and you take those skills with you. And so that's part of why we love interviewing people who are at big law firms and talk about how you get into those positions. So Marisol, how was your job search right after law school?
So it was fine. I agree with what Ben just said as far as staying open-minded. I think looking back, I was probably a little closed-minded only because I was born and raised in Tampa, and I've always said I never wanted to leave Tampa. And so I clerked for a couple of larger firms when I was in law school. And so when I was doing OCIs, I had several offers, but some of the offers were in other offices. And that's just where the need was. And to me, it was really important to stay in Tampa. I could not see myself honestly living anywhere else. So I took that in mind. And when I was in law school, I reached out to some of the mentors that are in the community. And the last year I participated in a juvenile dependency and delinquency clinic, and I loved it. It was honestly a wonderful experience. I loved everything about it. And so when I was talking to one of my mentors, she told me, you know, since you like that so much and you've already done the big law, maybe try starting at a smaller practice to see if you would like that better. And then you can kind of balance it out and see if later on you want to go to another big firm or if you want to stay and kind of do the smaller to mid-size route. So she recommended family law, and now I know that family law is very different than juvenile delinquency and dependency, but at the time that you're a law student, you know, you don't really know. You just want to learn, you want to get the experience. And so I started going with her to a lot of the HCBA luncheons. And so I met several attorneys, and in this particular occasion, I was trying to balance out two offers, one that was not in Tampa and that one that was, but I was really unsure of. So when I was sitting down at the HCBA luncheon, I ended up meeting people that only practice family law at a firm in Tampa. And so they asked me, you know, what are you doing after the luncheon? And I said, well, I have to drive back to Gainesville. And they said, hey, swing by the office. So I swung by the office and they made me an offer. And so I saw it as, I'm a big believer in signs and that everything happens for reasons. So I saw that as a sign, and I went back to Gainesville and I was really happy about that. And so I turned down the other offers, and that's kind of the transition from law school. I ended up starting actually a little before I graduated law school. I started at that particular firm, and it was an interesting experience. So I think family law is great. It teaches you how to know people and how to interact with people, especially when they are at their worst, because that's truly who you see. You see extremely educated, successful people, but at their worst. So I think that has really taught me the skill set to navigate, you know, what I do now as far as when I pick up the phone and talk to any client. So I thought that that was an important just lesson for me to learn. And so it was great overall, but I agree with Ben as far as staying open-minded. So I do think in that particular occasion, I might have done a little bit more research in general and just kind of weighed the pros and cons of all the offers. And if one meant that I wasn't going to be in Tampa, it didn't mean that I could never return to Tampa. And I think when you're a law student, you just sometimes you have narrow tunnel vision and you know, this is what I want, and you know, you don't really seek out other opportunities. So my advice would be to do as much research, but also to network in the community. I think a lot of law students think that a lot of these networking events are only for lawyers and judges, and that's not true. I started going to several events when I was still in law school, and I met a lot of people that now I consider my mentors. So I would definitely recommend just testing the waters. If you have an offer, reach out to some of the summers or some of the clerks, younger associates that work there. Try to figure out what it's like, the practice group, the personalities, the type of work, the billable hours. Just in general, really learn the people before you say yes to an offer. That's probably the best advice that I could give somebody.
That's great, Marisol. You covered the next two questions altogether too. So I just want to make one point. HCBA is the Hillsborough County Bar Association, and that is the largest voluntary bar association in Tampa Bay. They have over 4,000 attorneys. I'm a member as well, and they have been one of the supporters of this program, so we're big fans of HCBA. And I agree, one of the things we do is bring students to these events, encourage them to attend so that they can have that networking. And we're gonna circle back to the HCBA when we talk about the diversity portion of our talk. But let's go to Ben and see if you can tell us a little bit about how you ended up choosing your area of practice and what advice you'd have for new and for students considering entering law school or the practice of law.
Okay, yeah. So my practice is litigation, business litigation. So that covers a lot of different things. It's really the needs of the firm at that time. Generally, I do real estate litigation. Our clients are trying to develop some property or trying to obtain permits, some development, and there's lots of legal issues that come up with that. I handle bankruptcy cases, fraudulent transfer cases, eminent domain cases. You know, when you're a first or second, third, fourth, even year attorney, sometimes you're just really, your client is your partner or the shareholder or the senior associate, whoever you're working under. So whatever sort of cases that the partners I work with get, then that's what I'm doing. But the reason I was drawn to litigation is because of, in law school, they had a mock trial team and also a class called trial practice. And I had no experience with any of that kind of stuff before law school. And I said, like I told you earlier, I wanted to try everything and really enjoyed the mock trial stuff, the teamwork, the preparation, the stress, the excitement of being in court, everything about it. I loved it. And that's part of litigation. There's more corporate litigation where most of what you're doing is discovery, sort of behind the scenes work. But really the trial team is what sparked my interest in litigation. And that is part of what we do and part of what I do now. As far as advice for people considering law school, I would say don't rush. I think I'm glad I worked after college. I'm glad I worked for 3 years and now I'm pretty much doing something totally different than what I did after college. And I was basically a teacher, inner city school teacher. Now I'm a corporate litigator. So I would just urge people who are considering law school to maybe get some experience out in the field. There's nothing wrong with transitioning straight from college to law school. Most people do that. And if you know that's what you want to do, then absolutely. But also understand that when you get into law school, you're going to learn about 10 million different things that you could probably never heard of that might spark your interest. So I'm sure there's people who come into law school and they know they want to be a criminal defense lawyer. They have they have that idealistic mindset and they know what they need to do to get to that role. And they should shoot for that. But along the way, you might learn, I remember taking contracts and actually kind of liking it. I thought it would be super boring, but I loved contracts, and I don't know, I'm not ashamed of it, but maybe you'll go to law school and learn about something that you didn't know before and maybe be interested by it. So definitely have a reason for going to law school, have a goal and have a purpose for that, because it can be very expensive and very time consuming and very stressful. But again, be open-minded and don't rush. Take your time, make sure that that's what you want to do. And I would encourage people to get work experience first.
Yeah, that's great advice. I had 4 years between undergrad and law school. I taught, but also did a few other things. I worked in banking, finance, did all this other stuff. And I wanted to be a criminal defense attorney. It's never happened. So now I just teach criminal law. That's my big joke now, because for whatever reason, I could never quite get a criminal law job. But you never know. Like Marisol said, she did that dependency clinic. I did a clinic too with the state attorney's office and loved it. Or you might do and say, this is absolutely not what I want to do. And that level of certainty can be really helpful. in helping you make decisions. So now let's transition to the part where we're talking about diversity and inclusion, what we like to call our ideals. And of course, my dog decides to start barking. Inclusion, diversity, equity, access, leadership, and service. And you two just wrote this great article for the Hillsborough County Bar Association Lawyer Magazine. So why don't you two tell me about it? I guess we'll start with Marisol.
So, as I was saying earlier, I met people in law school and they became my mentors, and I've continued to stay in contact with them. So to me, mentorship has always been kind of probably one of the most important things in this profession before entering it, and then now that I'm in it. I think the best advice you can get from people is just generally people that have done this for, many, many, many years, and they can kind of guide you and answer your questions. Oftentimes, that doesn't mean you need to be mentored by somebody at your firm. You can scope out other people and just in general, just take them out to lunch or just call them, email them, and they can also assist. Sometimes it also may be a little bit more comfortable for associates to seek out those mentors that are not necessarily practicing, because I think it provides you the ability to be a little bit more open. And so Ben and I wrote an article about mentorship and its importance in the community. And so I take that, I value that a lot. I have a lot of mentors, but I too mentor people because I think you can do both. And I would say what I've learned and what I really try to do is if I'm with a mentor and they introduce me to two individuals in the community, I say, okay, well, they introduced me to those individuals for a reason. So I really try to go out of my way to maintain contact with those individuals, and I kind of build up my network that way. So those individuals, introduce me to other individuals, and, so on and so forth. But so I would consider myself an introvert. So when I first started and went to all these events, I would find a table and a chair and just go sit in the back corner with no one around and just not talk to anyone. And as soon as the event was over, I would try to, go to the elevator and leave. So now I feel a lot more comfortable. I'm in a lot of organizations, and because I know everyone there, not everyone, but a significant amount of people there, I feel a lot more comfortable now. And I think that's really important as an attorney, to not feel that you're kind of alone in the profession, because it can be stressful, and just having that network to reach out to for support to me is really important. So I thought, well, Ben and I can really, since we both value mentorship, we can take the time to write about it and then have it published. And so we just got together, I'm in Tampa, he's in West Palm Beach. So we just communicated over the phone. Nowadays, that's what everyone's doing, so that's fine. And we reached out to other people that we know. So his aunt, who's a U.S. attorney, and John Chaffino also for some quotes, and then my CEO, Rich McIntyre, to just provide their opinion or their thoughts on it. So I would always encourage young lawyers, don't be afraid, reach out to someone. I remember I took an adoption class in law school, and I got cold called for a particular case. And I ended up reaching out to the attorney who, unbeknownst to me, is in Tampa. And we had lunch the very next day. I drove, met her, and now she's one of my biggest advocates. So I always tell my mentees to do that. And even before entering law school, right? So you can shadow someone, you can shadow a judge, you can shadow an attorney. I feel like sometimes attorneys in this profession think that, they cannot talk to judges or, certain attorneys, and that's not true. Reach out to anyone and everyone, because everyone is here to help you and to support you. So I find that to be something that a lot of young lawyers need, and it doesn't matter how old you are. So when I'm 40, 50, 60, whatever, hopefully make it to 100, I will still have mentors. And so I, again, try to reach out to younger individuals that I can help as well.
Nice. So Ben, what was your experience with mentors, and talk about the process you used to co-write this article? Because I co-wrote with Brielle Tucker, who Marisol knows, and we talked about mentorship as well. And so of course, we're going to share you guys' article with our audience. So I want to hear a little bit more about it, Ben.
Sure. I'll just add that I think, I just wanted to add that I think it's super important, mentoring. It's very underrated. It's not really talked about a lot. And you really have to be a self-starter and a go-getter sometimes to find a mentor. In my experience, the only person in my family who was an attorney is my aunt over there in Tampa, who we've mentioned a few times now. And she was someone I felt like I could ask, I could turn to and ask for advice with whatever it was, whether it was career advice or actual work-related advice. Gunster does a really good job of providing mentorship to the young people. Not necessarily even in your practice group, but just someone who's a senior attorney. They usually, they try and connect someone who's more senior to someone who's a little younger, and then you guys can figure out ways to learn from each other. But even with that, even with a law firm that's pretty big that does facilitate mentorship, no one's really gonna hold your hand. No one's gonna make it easy for you. And this is another reason why I turn to someone like Marisol or some of my classmates who I graduated with, and even younger folks that I went to law school with. I'll reach out, text, call, because I have a lot to learn from the people who are younger than me, and I'm always trying to learn from those people who are older than me. And whenever someone asks me for advice, I feel grateful, because that's sort of like a mentorship role. I think I'll echo what Marisol said about getting involved in the community. I'm over in Palm Beach County, and it's very easy in Florida, especially in Palm Beach County, to get involved in the local bar associations and local nonprofits. I'm a volunteer at the Boys and Girls Club, so I like to mentor middle school kids. It's kind of like what I did in New York. And so if you're committed to it, there's a bajillion ways to find a mentor, be a mentor. And as far as diversity, I think that's sort of the whole theme of what you're doing, Jocelyn. I think diversity can mean lots of different things. I think we don't want to pigeonhole I think some people have limited views of what diversity means. Background, where you come from, what you look like, what you're interested in, what your professional experience looks like. And so if you're just starting out, or even if you're an older attorney, you get involved in the community, you get involved in local bar association committees, or whatever it is, local organizations, you'll find that you have much more in common with people who are different from you than you think. And I think a lot of young people coming out of law school need to do a good job of getting involved in the community, meeting people who are different than them, even politically, even someone who disagrees with you politically. I think it's really important to get out and talk to people who disagree with you. And we need to learn how to disagree peacefully. And like I said, you have a lot more in common with the people who don't necessarily look like you than you think. And so I think what you're doing with the podcast and the blog and everything you're doing is great. And so I want to try and help push that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And mentorship is a great way to do that. One of the things we tell our students too is, try to get mentors, like you said, who are different than you in some way, so that you can connect with people on all levels and really find a commonality. Because it's important, if you're a woman, that you have male mentors and female. If you're one race, you have people from different backgrounds. If you're one religion, etc. And I have friends who are different religions, races, gender identities, sexual expression, all kinds of things. And I've learned so much about them. What I've learned the most is, at the heart of everyone's existence, we're trying to be happy. We're trying to keep a roof over our heads, clothes on our backs, food on our stomachs, loved ones close by, stay healthy, etc. And so if we can get past all the other noise, then we can accomplish a lot. So that is our hope with the program. Guys, this has been absolutely wonderful. I really appreciated having both of you on this podcast, and it went very smoothly. It's almost like we rehearsed it or something. So I can see why you two work so well together. So thank you again, Ben and Marisol, for joining us on the Journey to Esquire, the podcast. For more information about our programs and this podcast, please visit www.journeytoesquire.com. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Marisol. Bye-bye.
Thank you.